There comes a moment, and I say this as a former lawyer, when frankly the politics has got to trump, and the Foreign Office and Foreign Office ministers, along with Number 10, have got to say, we've heard enough actually from the lawyers. Find us a way now to be able to use the money that we can that we have access to from the UK.
On to talking about frozen Russian assets, because this is a big conversation that's been going on, it feels like, for such a long time. Ministers here are saying they're going to try and unfreeze more than £8 billion of Russian assets which are frozen in Britain, put that money towards either the Ukrainians fighting the war, or if there was a peace deal, the reconstruction of the country. It requires negotiations with the EU. Belgium seems to be quite a sticking point because they have a lot of money held in Belgium, the equivalent of a third of their GDP, and they're worried about releasing that after the war, the Russians could come after them and want that money back. It's all to do with sort of legal complications. I just wonder, Jack, how we speed up this process, how we convince the Belgians that actually £100 billion needs to be released to help Ukraine. Why is it taking so long? What do we do to speed it up?
Well, I think in terms of the European funds, they probably do need to reach some kind of agreement. There does seem to be a route through this using a different legal mechanism in the European Union than the one they were originally planning to, which means that they could do it without unanimity, and therefore Belgium and perhaps even Hungary having to agree to it. But my very strong view is that they should get on with this. If the UK could move first and set off a train of events, I think that would be a positive thing for us to do. I think it's incredible that we've gone through these years of war with Ukraine desperately requiring resources, and these resources lying there being unused. There's another example in the UK context, which is the what's called the Chelsea money, which was the sale of Chelsea Football Club under the sanctioning of Roman Abramovich. And that money is which I think is over £3 billion alone, is still sitting in an account in London. And successive foreign secretaries have completely failed to get that over the line and get that money released for humanitarian purposes in Ukraine, which was what it was originally promised for by, amongst others, Abramovich himself. So, I think the European governments need to move on this decisively and quickly. Ukraine needs the funds now, not in a year's time or 2 years' time. And it would be a very strong signal, both to the Americans and the Russians, that they're not going to get away with these cosy deals that they're currently planning.
And Nikki, as we're talking, President Putin and Narendra Modi, the Indian Prime Minister, have just finished a press conference after Putin going to Delhi. And, they're talking about a special partnership, economic cooperation for the rest of the decade. I mean, it really is a reminder of, despite President Trump slapping huge tariffs on India if they carry on buying cheap Russian oil, they're still doing that. It's so difficult to isolate Russia, and this is why this frozen money is so crucial.
Look, I would absolutely, entirely agree with that. I mean, there's a whole debate to be had about the choice that Narendra Modi is making, and the way that he's decided to face, to deal with Russia. But look, I think there comes a moment. I mean, two thoughts on this, I suppose. There comes a moment, and I say this as a former lawyer, when frankly the politics has got to trump, and the Foreign Office and Foreign Office ministers, along with Number 10, have got to say, we've heard enough actually from the lawyers. Find us a way now to be able to use the money that we can that we have access to from the UK to benefit Ukraine. And in a way, we don't know what's going to happen with the peace deal. I still suspect that actually Putin has no interest in ending the war at all. But I think in a way that compels use of this money quicker, so that you don't end up in the Belgian position of saying, well, we just decided to use it, and then there's some sort of apparent end to the conflict, which muddies the waters. And also the other thing is that the moment, slightly tongue-in-cheek, the moment this government is bringing Brexit back on the agenda, this will be one very major thing to say, actually, of course we want to work with our European partners, but if they're really slow on this, here is something that we can do. We haven't got to wait for them. That supports Ukraine at the time that it really needs it, which is now.
Today we are proposing to cover 2/3 of Ukraine's financing needs for the next 2 years. So this is 90 billion euros. The remainder would be for international partners to cover.
Very much. And before taking your questions, just a short reminder that we have
listened very carefully to Belgium's concerns, and we have taken almost all of them into account in our proposal that is today on the table of the reparations loans. We have very strong safeguards in place to protect member states and to reduce the risks as much as possible.
Maxime Prévost, the foreign minister, has a feeling that Belgium hasn't been...
We all know that we can never match the sacrifice of the Ukrainian people, but what we can match is their stamina, their resolve, their staying power, and we can equip them with the means to defend themselves and to lead peace negotiations from a position of strength. And since pressure is the only language the Kremlin responds to, we can also dial it up. We have to increase the costs of war for Putin's aggression, and today's proposal gives us the means to do this. We want peace, and no one wants more peace than Ukraine. Therefore, today we're sending a very strong signal to the Ukrainian people that we are in for the long haul. We can equip them with the means to defend themselves and, even more important, with the means to lead peace negotiations from a position of strength.
We have repeatedly said that we consider the option of the reparations loan the worst of all, as it is risky and has never been done before. Everyone can see how difficult it has been for months to find a robust solution to the proposed option. The letter of my Prime Minister outlined again clearly our concerns. In short, the necessary guarantees for Euroclear, full mutualization of the risks, and go beyond Euroclear and Belgium. These are legitimate and reasonable concerns. Our door has always remained open and still is. However, we have the frustrating feeling of not having been heard. Our concerns are being downplayed. The text the Commission will table today do not address our concerns in a satisfactory manner. It is not acceptable to use the money and leave us alone facing the risks. The proposed reparations loan is clearly not a preferred choice. In the event member states wish to go in that direction, we demand that the risks Belgium is facing as a result of this scheme are fully covered. This is no unreasonable request. This is simply fairness. We are not seeking to antagonize our partners or Ukraine. We are simply seeking to avoid potentially disastrous consequences for a member state that is being asked to show solidarity without being offered the same solidarity in return.
I am pleased to announce that Canada, alongside several allies, will purchase a package of military capabilities under the Pearl program. This is the NATO vehicle for military support for Ukraine. Canada's contribution to the purchase of this Pearl package will be $200 million, bringing Canada's total contribution to $890 million over the past 6 months. Merci beaucoup, mes amis.